the Fit and Healthy Athlete Podcast.
Debbie Potts is here to help you burn fat, optimize health, and enhance your performance in life as you age. We'll explore metabolic health, holistic health, and actionable insights with guest experts and deep dives into health topics. Whether you're an athlete or just looking to thrive, let's discover how to become your best self. Let's get started.
All right, let's get to my part 3 of this 4-part series, connecting the dots, the root cause story of what's really happening in my body as I share my personal health investigation, so you understand what I'm doing as a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and nutritional therapy practitioner. I'm collecting clues. So for me, I'm investigating, being a health detective of what's going on with my body from the inside out and putting all this together in a phased program. So we've been gathering the clues. Now we step into what I call the forensic phase, where everything suddenly clicks and symptoms stop being random and become predictable physiological effects of deeper patterns. This is why I love my job. So I'm sharing my own personal example because I gave myself permission to talk about myself. I would not do this for talking about a client. Now, where clients always say to me though, oh my gosh, no one has ever explained this to me. So today I'm walking you through how my clues connected, not as isolated issues, treating one symptom at a time and not looking at how the body is connected. So we're talking about one single interconnected story. And you might be listening and ask yourself, could this be happening to me? So let's go in. Recap. Root cause number 1. We talked about low butyrate, how that's related to impacting my energy because we create less ATP. Less energy, less ATP produced is going to lead to less power and impact my recovery. So remember, we're talking about being a fit and healthy athlete or fit and healthy active individual as we age from the inside and outside. So butyrate, what is it? It is a short chain fatty acid produced by your good gut bacteria. Specifically, the words I never can say, Faecalibacterium, Rosaburia, and Eubacterium. Butyrate is the number 1 preferred fuel source for your colon cells and a booster for mitochondria throughout the body. I always heard it was a fuel source for the colon cells in my seminars I've taken, but not really thinking about how it's a booster for the mitochondria throughout our entire body. So you can start to think about what happens when the butyrate levels are low. Low butyrate affects everything downstream. Your mitochondria underproduce ATP. Remember, ATP is your energy currency, your cellular energy source of energy for all your cells, except your red blood cells. Now your gut lining will probably be weaker and more permeability, leaky gut if your butyrate is low. And guess what? Our friend the vagus nerve loses regulation and inflammation rises and muscle fatigues happens earlier. So for me personally, I have lower power during intervals. My speed work just doesn't really get to be speed work. I'm not getting up to where I need to be running. I can do speed work hill repeats on a bike and it's fine. But I don't have the ability to push myself on my run. They're more of a jog. Keep in mind too, when I'm using running as my own example to see if I'm improving, I used to run pretty just somewhat fast, but not fast because I'm a tall person. There's a lot of me. But my best marathon time, Boston Marathon, what was it? 3:12. I could do a half marathon in that time now. And my best half marathon was 1:33. I used to do Ironmans and I'd always do around a 3:45 at the end of an Ironman after swimming and biking. And so now for me to do a half marathon, I struggle to get just around under 2 hours, and I can't even imagine being able to run a marathon. So, and this has been going on since I had my adrenal exhaustion, quote unquote, since 2013 when I stopped being able to do racing. So, which is okay, but I just still like to do some runs once in a while and not choose not to race because of my health issues. I want to choose not to race because I don't feel like racing. I've been there, done it, and they're way too expensive. So, low butyrate, signs and symptoms, how it correlates with my personal areas of opportunity. This reduced ability to push on runs, slower recovery, but then skin issues. I tend to have more dry skin and more inflammation from same stressors that shouldn't bother me. So my point in all these podcasts, when I talk about my case study and even other examples, it's not about age. It's not about your training. It's a fuel issue at a cellular level, and it's hard to explain to people what's going on, even family members. Low butyrate, low energy, low ATP, low performance. So that's a big one for me personally when I want to be able to run strong again, because I'm not that old that I shouldn't be able to run. So it's just running's not everything. Is just, I'm using that as an example to know, am I getting better? Am I healthier? At a cellular level, are my mitochondria improving? That's very obvious to me if I'm seeing changes. Okay, root cause number 2, we've been talking about fat malabsorption, which is important. People trying to do a keto diet that's higher fat, low carb, or more of a carnivore, which is, eating fatty meats. You're getting your fat and your protein and 0 carbs. Fat malabsorption can be an issue. Hormones can be impacted, skin issues, and just metabolism. So for me, my lab work GI map marker, that was a big red flag, steatocrit, was 33%. Remember, normal is under 15%. So this is meaning that 1/3 of my fats were passing right through me undigested. Why does that matter? As we've talked on and off over the years, originally this podcast was called Fit, Fat, Fast, Eat Fat to Get Faster. But fat is needed for building mitochondria membranes, a cell membrane. We need fat to make our sex hormones. We need fat to produce bile, stabilize our blood sugar, repair our skin, to absorb vitamins A, D, E, and K2. So what happens when fat is not absorbed? We can call this metabolic malnutrition. You can have low hormones, you probably have low mitochondria function, low nutrient absorption, brittle skin, poor recovery, lower thyroid activation, keeping in mind that T3, the active form of thyroid, needs selenium and fat-soluble vitamins to work. And we might experience a lower metabolic spark. So how did this show up in my body? Well, we've gone over early fatigue. Couldn't stay in zone 2 on a long run, even though I'm going so slow. It's more of a jog. I just probably need to eat carbs, and I don't like eating when I run, but heart rate would go up a little higher and just legs feel heavier. So this is not the running demands of my mitochondria. My running is different than cycling, and running is requiring more mitochondria function to be more efficient. Running requires more oxygen turnover and deeper metabolic flexibility. And for myself, I'm not having the fat oxidation machinery online for some reason, as we're finding out why. And this is why many of us in middle age athletes are saying, I'm fit, but I can't burn fat. And it's not always just eating a high carb processed diet, bunch of gels. It could be you are not functioning as you should because of your mitochondria, because we have metabolic malnutrition. So we need to eat healthy fats, and fats are needed to be broken down properly. So if we're not digesting the fats, you eat them and they're just coming out through your stool, you will see performance changes as you're going into the long, slow stuff. If you're training for distance, which is not beneficial and it's not what we should be doing for aging, we should just do short stuff in intervals. But for me, training a longer run, that was my red flag. Now, we talked about root cause number 3, sluggish bile and elevated bilirubin. That was a marker, is a marker on blood chemistry panel tests. And you can correlate information with toxin backup and low-fat oxidation. Bile is the unappreciated supporter of metabolism. Bile breaks down fats. Bile carries out toxins. Bile clears estrogen. Bile stimulates peristalsis. Bile helps kill pathogens. Bile signals the thyroid and directs metabolic flexibility. So if your bilirubin is higher and we don't know why, we need to look at what's going on with the bile flow. Do you have sluggish bile? And that's important to look at because if you have sluggish bile, that can cause estrogen recirculation, so estrogen dominance, toxin accumulation, lower thyroid hormone activation, more inflammation, constipation or sticky stools, poor fat oxidation in your workouts, just metabolic bottleneck. And for me, sluggish bile is showing up. I started paying attention to this when my estrogen was higher than it should be and started being curious about my liver, gallbladder bile, dry skin, and slower fat loss. Now, again, looking at the why. It's not age. It's not willpower. It's not because I'm training harder. Root system failure is what we need to look at. Root cause number 4, LPS, endotoxin overload, metabolic inflammation. This is a big topic, and I've gone into this with my friend Martha Carlin. I've done some solo episodes on endotoxicity, LPS, and I learned about this from Karan of Microbiome Labs 10 years ago. Endotoxicity. LPS is lipopolysaccharide, a toxin found on certain gut bacteria, especially Enterobacter, that's elevated in my microbiome. And when your gut lining is irritated or thin, lipopolysaccharides leak into the bloodstream. When they leak into the bloodstream, they escape. This is called metabolic endotoxemia. And this is a problem for so many health issues. LPS raises cortisol, blocks insulin sensitivity, lowers fat oxidation, blocks thyroid receptor signaling. I'm taking T3 the last 2 years and I've barely seen an increase. Maybe this is why. Creates brain fog, increases water retention, inflames your mitochondria, decreases your heart rate variability, increases your risk for injuries, and triggers psoriasis and skin inflammation. My Enterobacter was elevated and my butyrate is low. This means my gut barrier is not as strong as it should be. Lipopolysaccharides are high. My immune system wasn't as it should be. My cortisol was slightly up. So in my body, I probably am experiencing more weight loss resistance. I'm having a harder time burning fat. My glucose might be a little bit higher than it should be. Dry skin flaring up on and off. More stress sensitivity. And more recovery time needed from just workouts. LPS literally blocks fat oxidation by damaging mitochondria lipid membranes. It shows up on the bike, not as much than running, because cycling is more metabolically easier is mechanically efficient and stress hormone stabilizing. But running increases your cortisol. Running is a higher impact load. LPS with high cortisol levels, if you have chronic stress, you're going to see and experience a metabolic gridlock. So we need to look at cortisol and look at this connection to insulin and how your fat burning switch can be off. Root cause number 5, cortisol and insulin have a direct relationship. If cortisol is up, insulin is up. If insulin's up, fat burning is down. Cortisol tells the body we are in danger. Hold on to that fuel. Insulin is telling the body, store this energy, do not release fat. Together, cortisol and insulin shut down fat oxidation, thyroid conversion, mitochondria efficiency, metabolic flexibility. Pretty important for a lot of people struggling with thyroid issues as they age, with unexplained weight gain. There's a reason. Work backwards. Is your cortisol up? What's your insulin levels? Why are they up? You're not eating a lot of crap. It's not what you're eating. It's not your diet. It's physiology. So for me, cortisol might be a little higher, but depending on the day of your cycle. My stress-sensitive genetics are all against me. COMT, MAOA, a couple others. Endotoxins, they're elevated. Cycle in my late luteal test. I tested my blood work on the end of my luteal phase. So cortisol will be a little higher and glucose. So I don't really know exactly where I am. I need to redo my right day of my cycle. It's hard this age when you don't really know what your cycle's, where you are. It changes all the time. But stack this all together. A body cannot burn fat efficiently under stress. And so I've said this for years. When I gained 30 pounds after having my adrenal exhaustion, I went from being the best shape in my life to gaining 30 pounds without changing anything of nutrition. And we don't really lose weight so much from exercise, it's more what we're eating, but then your stress, chronic stress, and your sleep, and your gut. And then there's genetics. Root cause number 6, genetics that predict my exact patterns. I won't go into all the genetic SNPs, as I've done a little bit already, but stress sensitivity genes means I feel stress more intensely. I hold adrenaline longer. I have higher cortisol spikes than others. I recover slower from sympathetic activation. This explains why LPS hits me harder. My running feels harder than bike riding. My fat loss stalls under any type of stress. Metabolic flexibility genes. There's 5 different ones you can look up. And these predict if you have poor high fat tolerance, as myself, more insulin resistance under stress, which happened to me in the past, need for bile to function well, increase in carb sensitivity. This matches me. Right now, I'm seeing sluggish bile. I have high steatocrit on my GI map. My glucose is running a little higher. My mitochondria test using MeScreen told me this information as well. I have a harder time to lose fat weight. Then I have mitochondria resilience genes, 6 different ones that I have that predict more lipid peroxidation, weaker cell membranes, higher reactive oxygen species, more oxidative stress damage, poor omega-3 conversion, greater need for phospholipids. Bingo. This is exactly what my MeScreen showed. MeScreen mitochondria test showed early lipid oxidative stress. My performance limitations were correlating with this information. The score on my MeScreen, the profile test results said ROS lipid support, early membrane stress. This means that my mitochondria membranes, the cell membrane, are inflamed. The electron transport chain is leaky. Oxidative stress is elevated. My mitochondria network is fragmented. and my ATP output is lower, and glycolysis is compensating for oxidative weakness. Why does this matter? For me, as I said, running is my example to see if I'm improving, but it's mitochondria heavy. Running is more eccentric load. It requires higher impact, we went over, higher cortisol, higher reactive oxygen species, higher oxygen turnover. But if your mitochondria cell membranes are stressed, you have less power, your pace drops, your heart rate increases, the fat burning lowers, and recovery slows. And this is sadly what I've been experiencing and not understanding, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything. Is this really middle age? And it's not to do with my hormones. I'm taking estrogen, progesterone, DHEA. I took testosterone about 3 years ago. Didn't do a thing. There's something else going on. So if your mitochondria membranes are stressed, this is what I'm experiencing. Cycling's fine, but running is not great, as I said. Cycling is smoother, lower oxygen species, oxidative stress. But running, as we went over, has higher stress and a higher oxidative stress load. My mitochondria are not able to buffer the load. It's a little bit of a problem. So we have this network effect. One problem became many. So the big takeaway is that problems don't happen alone. They cascade. So here's my chain. If we work backwards, I always understand, why did that happen? Go a little deeper, dig deeper, keep going and going and going. For me, that's why the GI map really helped tie this all together. Low butyrate, I have gut barrier thinning. If I have a thin gut wall lining, leaky gut, these lipopolysaccharides can cross through, that barrier is broken down into the bloodstream. Endotoxicity. That will raise cortisol. Mitochondria get inflamed. Fat oxidation stops. And bilirubin rises. My bile slows down. Steatocrit increases. Fat-soluble vitamins lower down. My thyroid signaling drops. I lose muscle power. I have dry skin. The runs get harder. Fat loss stalls. And glucose can rise. This is metabolic loop. It's not random. It's not about your age. It's not a training problem. It's a system breakdown. But my point is, good news, systems can be rebuilt. So let's continue on and understand, how are we going to rebuild this system? Before we go into this final phase, I want to do a little segment on your metabolic spark plug, the thyroid. Most women over 40 are walking around with suboptimal thyroid function, even when their labs say they're normal. And men, I see a lot of men with low thyroid. Here's the key. Thyroid hormones do not work unless digestion, bile, minerals, and mitochondria are working. This is a part no one tells us in middle age. For myself, even though I'm taking T3 medication, as I've been doing the last year or more, my thyroid is still low at the cellular level. Let's explain. Thyroid basics. Let's understand your thyroid produces T4, the storage hormone, and T3, the active hormone, your metabolic accelerator. T4 converts to T3 60% in the liver, 20% in the gut, and 20% in peripheral tissues. But T3 cannot activate without certain cofactors. Metabolism, we need selenium, we need iodine, magnesium, zinc, fat-soluble vitamins, healthy bile flow, and mitochondria support. So, T3 cannot activate metabolism without selenium, is required for the enzyme that converts T4 to T3. Iodine is required to synthesize T4 and T3. Magnesium is required for ATP binding. T3 works through ATP. Zinc is required for thyroid stimulating hormone and T3 receptor sensitivity. So if you're low zinc, we need to look at that. Fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K2 are required for receptor activation and cell membrane signaling. And healthy bile flow is required for absorbing A, D, E, and K2 and stimulating thyroid receptor activity. Crazy. No one thinks about this and digs this deep to put this together. Why am I taking T3 and it's not changing my T3 levels every blood test? T3 works inside mitochondria to increase ATP production. So if you have normal TSH, normal free T3, and normal free T4, or maybe they're low, you can have cellular hypothyroidism. This means that the hormone is not getting inside of the cells or activating your mitochondria. And this is what's been happening to me. I'm taking T3. It's still low, and depending if you're looking at optimal versus normal ranges, but the thyroid hormone is not getting into my cells and activating my mitochondria. So this is why, me as an example again, my T3 medication wasn't giving me the metabolic boost I thought it would. Based on my labs and genetics, the picture becomes crystal clear. Let's put this together. You might be thinking this yourself, fat malabsorption. I was not absorbing vitamin A, D, E, and K2, and these are critical for thyroid receptor activation. Without vitamins A and D, T3 is not able to bind to the receptor effectively. Sluggish bile, elevated bilirubin showed on my blood labs. Bile, as you know, is required to absorb fat-soluble vitamins. Bile also stimulates thyroid receptors. Poor bile, poor thyroid activation. This explains dry skin, slow recovery, and low hormone resilience. Sluggish bile is needed to absorb the fat-soluble vitamins, and bile stimulates thyroid receptors. What about low stomach acid? H. pylori. And if you just have low stomach acid because you're on Pepcid, PPI, you're taking those different antacids, you are lowering your stomach acid. We need acidic environment in our stomach to get zinc, the magnesium, the B12, protein. We need protein to convert to amino acids. These are all thyroid cofactors. If we don't have the zinc, the magnesium, the B12, the amino acids, we do not have the cofactors. And if we don't have the cofactors, T3 medication does not penetrate the cell. Wow, this is going deep. Now, we went over butyrate. 20% of T4 to T3 conversion happens in the gut. Butyrate increases receptor sensitivity. Butyrate reduces inflammation that blocks thyroid action. Butyrate improves insulin sensitivity, which improves thyroid conversion. Wow, another clue. High cortisol. If you have high cortisol, T4 increasingly converts to the inactive reverse T3. T3 receptors become resistant. Mitochondria shut down energy production, probably related to cell danger response. Cortisol that's elevated turns your thyroid off at a cellular level. And then we look at me-screen mitochondria testing, oxidative stress. Oxidative stress damages your cell membranes where the receptors for thyroid receptors live. Mitochondria membranes, or T3, increases ATP output. If the membrane is damaged, the spark plug misfires. And then we talked about inflammation from LPS, and Enterobacter was elevated on my GI map. If we have inflammation, chronically high, enzymes, thyroid receptor signaling, mitochondria, T3 activation, all of this is blocked from inflammation. chronic inflammation. So LPS literally prevents T3 from turning on fat burning. How many people are taking thyroid medication and it's not working? So for me, how low thyroid function is showing up in my symptoms, here's where the clues match again. Trouble burning fat on long runs. Again, this is not metabolism slowing with age. This is related to low bile, low butyrate, low fat soluble vitamins, low mitochondria ATP, and thyroid T3 resistance. I cannot access fat for fuel without T3 signaling. If you have higher fasting glucose, low T3 leads to low insulin sensitivity. Low T3 results in, from whichever way you look, high cortisol, high glucose. If you have sluggish liver, you have impaired glucose clearance. So low T3 is connected to so much, but taking that medication isn't the answer always. So T3 is required for fat oxidation to help with mitochondria uncoupling, lipolysis, breaking fat down, and metabolic flexibility. It's harder to lose fat if we have low T3. The body stores fat and doesn't burn it, but the medication isn't the answer again. T3 increases mitochondrial density, ATP output, oxygen consumption, muscle contractility. But if T3 is not getting inside my cells, I don't have the energy, the ATP. And then you can see dry skin, more wrinkles, loss of collagen. Can't just blame the aging process on all this. T3 drives skin turnover, energy, hydration of your skin, collagen synthesis. So low T3 and low fat soluble vitamins accelerates aging. So this is why low thyroid, I'm finding, is so common in middle age. And I want you to understand, men and women, but women, lower estrogen, lower thyroid receptor sensitivity. Higher stress, you have higher cortisol and lower T3 activation. You have low stomach acid, you have less zinc and magnesium, you have poor conversion. Lower bile flow, poor fat absorption. Fat soluble vitamins, you're not getting them. Inflammation, chronic inflammation blocks T3 at the receptor. Aging mitochondria with less energy, less ATP, less thyroid signaling. High training load suppresses recovery or suppresses T3 when your recovery is poor. So many athletes in middle age say, I eat clean and exercise, but I'm not losing any weight. Again, it might not be your willpower. It could be all just physiology. So connecting your labs, connecting the dots, for me, that low butyrate, low gut conversion, T4 to T3, low mitochondria activation, higher inflammation, higher cortisol, LPS from Enterobacter, sluggish bile, oxidative stress damaging the cell membranes, and T3 cannot signal ATP production. Low minerals, zinc and selenium needed for conversion, magnesium needed for ATP binding, and as estrogen drops for us females, reduces thyroid receptor responsiveness. This is what's going on for my case study. Why I was struggling to burn fat and more. So hopefully that helps understand a perfect storm for metabolic rigidity, that you're burning glycogen, not fat. You can't hold steady fat burning zones, your zone 2. Your heart rate might go up early. You might fatigue faster. It's thyroid driven metabolic bottleneck. So let's finish up and go through next part 4. Hey guys, Debbie, I'm back. Part 4, the FutureYou blueprint for myself. How I am rebuilding my system, that I have identified what is going on. This is the final phase of this investigation I've been sharing with you to help you understand how I work as a health investigator, and where clues become a plan, symptoms become data, and the story becomes a strategy. And this is so important because one of the biggest myths in middle age health, midlife health, just take more thyroid medication, your metabolism speed up. That's not true. I want you to understand how all this works. So it's not just looking at thyroid, but looking at your gut health and understanding all of this together. So I am going into a phase-based plan where I'm using, my goal is to restore energy, power, fat metabolism, hormone balancing, and athletic performance. This is what I'm creating for me, but this is what I do for my clients. Phase 1, digestion, absorption, and drainage. I'm rebuilding the foundations of my metabolism. Again, test and not guess, because I had no idea this was actually happening at this level until I investigated. I find this is an important part to start order of operations, building the foundations, rebuilding foundations of metabolism. Because if you do not digest your good nutrient-dense whole food, plant, or animal-based program, whatever you're following, you're not absorbing them. Especially if you're doing more protein-focused as I am and more of an animal-based program, I'm not breaking my food down. I'm not getting those healthy fats. If you can't absorb, you're not able to make your hormones. If you can't make your hormones, your thyroid slows down. If your thyroid slows down, your mitochondria are slower. If mitochondria are slower, fat burning shuts down. So this phase fixes these root bottlenecks that we found in my investigation. So not going into too much detail, but stomach acid to reset. I'm doing some supplements to help calm H. pylori that was still a little bit elevated, and perhaps introduce some stomach acid digestive support as betaine HCl as tolerated as I continue. And always doing the eating habits as slow eating, chewing your food, doing the breath work before meals, or even pulsetto, adding that in. Now, for me, it's low stomach acid. The H. pylori will lower my stomach acid. I'm not having good protein digestion. I'm not getting the minerals. And then I'm not able to get the cofactors we went over for T3 to help activate mitochondria. Next, I'm supporting my bile flow, certain supplements. I've been doing TUDCA. There are oxbile ingredients and some digestive enzymes you can look at, bitters, of course, hydration, electrolytes with B minerals. But bile is required to absorb vitamin A, D, E, K2, your fat-soluble vitamins. And the vitamin thyroid needs to work. We need these ingredients. I need to fix my fat malabsorption. Remember that steatocrit marker was high. That's a major blockage. Enzymes, my bile, phosphatidylcholine, I need to support. If you can't absorb fat, those healthy fats you're working on getting in, essential fatty acids, you cannot produce hormones, energy, or even your skin health. Then we talked about butyrate, restoring my butyrate, because low butyrate is giving clues to low energy. And so we can look at butyrate supplements, cooked fibers, polyphenols, but butyrate fuels mitochondria, tightens the gut lining, and reduces lipopolysaccharides, directly improving my thyroid signaling. And then we talked about lowering my lipopolysaccharides because LPS blocks fat burning, mitochondria enzymes, bile flow, thyroid receptors. So I can take supplements, but really working on what you're eating, lower inflammation meals. I would do pulsetto, the pulse device to activate my vagus nerve before I eat. Adding in aspartate, Saccharomyces boulardii, the butyrate should help, zinc carnosine. There's different things you can do. And then I need to reduce oxidative stress. So it's not about taking a lot of supplements. It's just a few things that's why I do it in phases. My mitochondria tests from MeScreen, and if you really want to do that test, I would suggest doing it because it gave a lot of insight and correlations to my GI map, but you can save $100 on MeScreen tests with my code. If you ask me, just let me know. But my MeScreen members showed ROS lipid support pattern, which means my mitochondria membranes are fragile and oxidizing. So I need more antioxidants, and then you look at my genetics too. So I have a reduction in ROS. I need to reduce my oxidative stress, basically. Now, nervous system foundation. I talked about pulsetto, I'll do more information on that. Breath work, morning sunlight, walking post meals. That's what I was saying. I'm doing all the lifestyle and nutrition, but I'm missing something. And that's what this phase is working on. Stacking what I've already been working on, the nervous system foundation, adding in pulsetto is my new thing. And parasympathetic state helps thyroid activation. Sympathetic state, thyroid suppression. Really big for a lot of people struggling with thyroid health. Look at the vagus nerve and digestion and much more. Now, next phase would be phase 2, killing and clearing and rebuilding. So month 3 to 6, I'm going a little deeper. I'm removing LPS producers. I'm rebuilding the mucosal lining, supporting detoxification, and then adding in support as my sauna and my sleep program, continue working on that. Then I work on my mitochondria, a muscle reboot. So maybe months 6 to 9, now I'm going into the next phase. This is where I fix the mitochondria, work on that cell membrane dysfunction, adding in the omega-3s, phosphatidylcholine, make sure I'm getting vitamin E, CoQ10. But imagine replacing wiring in your house that's faulty so electricity can flow smoothly again. This is what the mitochondria phase does. And this is why you don't start fixing the mitochondria or fixing the foundations out of order. You want to do things order of operations. So these lifestyle habits and nutritional therapy, the supplements, all this work we're doing for ourselves, not all at once. To build ATP, creatine, magnesium, deep sleep protocols, I'm doing that already. That's not what you have to look at with clients. What are you doing now? What's working, what's not working, and then we can identify what's missing. Now, strength training, I'm doing heavy strength training because muscle is the number one driver of metabolic flexibility. It's a sink for glucose sink. So the more muscle you have, more glucose disposal. And muscle health is number one protector against aging. And with my genetics, I need resistance training to maintain my lean mass. I didn't know until I dove into all my genetic reports I downloaded. I have this genetic SNP testosterone clearance gene. So I have to do strength training to increase or maintain my lean body mass. Now, running, we've gone over a lot, that it was more fat absorption, bile flow, thyroid activation, and mitochondria membranes that need to be restored. So it might be another 6 months where I feel I can finally run strong again and have improvement there, more power. And then after that, so it's like a 12-month program. Then I can work on optimizing my health, adding in the 12 to 15-hour fasting sometimes, periodizing my carbohydrates, my training, doing seasonal detox, trying maybe hyperbaric oxygen therapy sometimes, adding in all the stuff. But this is not a health kick. It's a way of living, and that's what the holistic method program is, looking at these 8 elements of the holistic method to creating your FutureYou blueprint based on testing and not guessing. So if there's one thing I want you to take away for this really long story, it's that you cannot supplement or out-train your way out of root cause dysfunction. We need to investigate, we need to understand your own patterns, and we need to look under the hood. Because you deserve to live vibrantly, energetically, joyfully, not fatigued, inflamed, confused, or stuck. And that's why I created the Holistic Method program 10 years ago, and now creating this FutureYou blueprint, combining this all together, functional lab testing with your holistic method elements, with genetics, with nutritional therapy analysis to help you do what I did, but be faster, expert guidance, do it without guessing. If you are ready to stop trying random things and actually identify your root causes, the next step is simple. Schedule your discovery call with me, and let's figure out how we can get started designing and building your FutureYou blueprint, a stronger, sharper, healthier, and more resilient you more than ever. So, thank you for sticking with this long episode series. I wanted to share with you because I thought it was such a good case study. So fascinating, maybe more for me because it was about me and understanding what has been going on and not improving since 2013. So hopefully you don't wait that long, but I've done different labs until I was able to dig in a little deeper with the mitochondria tests that just came out last year, and putting that together with the GI map and updating with my labs. It really made sense looking at it from a different lens with now the newer ways to do genetic analysis with AI. So thank you for following along and being curious about how to be your best self in the future. I look forward to hearing from you. Head to debbiepotts.net or shoot me an email at coachdebbiepotts@icloud.com.
Thanks for listening to the Fit and Healthy Athlete Podcast.
Coach Debbie Potts draws from decades of experience. Ready to optimize your health? Visit www.debbiepotts.net for a discovery call. Find her on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at Coach Debbie Potts. To support the show, like, rate, and review. See you next time.